The freezing wind cut like glass, and three shadows pressed against the brick wall, a mother and her twin daughters, trembling, desperate, invisible to the world, rushing past them on Christmas Eve. Hey there, beautiful souls! Welcome back to Unbroken Truths, where we share stories that remind us of the strength hiding in our darkest moments. Before we dive into tonight's incredible journey, tell us where in the world you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. We absolutely love seeing how far these stories of hope and resilience travel across the globe. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss the stories we have coming your way. Ready? Let's go. The words were barely a whisper, but they stopped Ethan Deckard's hand mid-reach for the car door handle. Dad, look, his 10-year-old son Owen was staring out the passenger window, his breath fogging the glass in the freezing December air. Ethan followed his gaze across the community center parking lot. Three figures huddled against the brick wall of the adjacent building, a woman and two small children pressed together like they were trying to become one person. Their thin coats were no match for the bitter Ohio wind that whipped through the empty street, carrying tiny crystals of snow that stung like needles. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest, a fist closing around his lungs. Christmas Eve, freezing temperatures, and a mother trying to shield her babies from the cold with nothing but her own body. "Stay in the car for a minute, buddy." He didn't wait for Owen's response. Ethan was already moving, popping the trunk, grabbing the wool blanket he kept for emergencies and the bag of canned goods they brought to donate. His worn boots crunched against the icy pavement as he approached slowly, carefully, not wanting to startle them. The woman looked up. Even in the dim glow of the flickering streetlight, Ethan could see the exhaustion carved into her face, eyes that had cried too many tears, a jawline set with fierce, protective determination. She couldn't have been more than 30, with dark hair pulled back in a messy bun and cheeks hollowed by hunger she'd hidden from her daughters. The two little girls pressed against her sides were identical twins, maybe 7 years old, with matching braids and faces pinched with cold and something worse than cold, fear. "I'm sorry to bother you," Ethan said gently, stopping a few feet away. He held up the blanket. "I'm Ethan. I was just dropping something off at the center, and I thought—" He paused, his throat suddenly tight. "Please, take these." The woman stared at him like he'd spoken a language she didn't understand. But before she could answer, Owen was already out of the car. Without a word, without being asked, he took off his winter jacket and draped it carefully over the smaller twins' shoulders. "I'm Owen," he said softly. "What's your name?" Lily," the little girl stammered through chattering teeth. "And I'm Rose," her sister added quietly, her voice barely audible. Ethan watched his son, this boy who'd lost his mother, but never lost his kindness, kneel down in the snow and smile at these frightened children like they mattered, like they were worth stopping for. "Come on," Owen said, reaching out his hand to Lily. "It's really warm inside, and Mr. Frank makes the best hot chocolate in the whole world." The woman's face crumpled for just a moment before she caught herself, holding back tears through sheer force of will. Ethan extended his hand. "Please, let us help." She looked at his outstretched hand, then at her daughters, then back at Ethan, and in her eyes, he saw something that made his chest ache, a war between pride and desperation, between the instinct to protect her children and the fear of trusting a stranger. "My name is Claire," she finally whispered. "Claire Dawson." She took his hand. But what Ethan didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know as he led this broken family inside, was that the truth behind Claire's story would shatter everything he thought he understood about betrayal, survival, and the thin line between helping someone and falling in love with them. The community center's heating system rattled and hummed, but it worked. That was what mattered. Ethan led them through the dimly lit hallway to the common room where Frank, the elderly night supervisor, who knew Ethan from his regular donations, was adjusting a space heater in the corner. "Frank, these folks need some warmth and maybe something to eat," Ethan said quietly. "Can you help?" Frank looked at Claire and the twins, and his weathered face softened immediately. He'd been working at this community center for 30 years. He'd seen it all, the broken, the desperate, the forgotten. But something about a mother and her children on Christmas Eve was different. "Of course," he said, his voice gruff but kind. "Sit down, I'll be right back." Claire sank onto the worn couch like her legs had finally given out. Rose and Lily pressed against her sides and still shivering despite the warmth beginning to seep into their small bodies. Ethan wrapped the blanket around all three of them, tucking it gently around the twins' shoulders. "Thank you," Claire whispered. She kept saying it like it was the only phrase she remembered, like it was the only lifeline she had left. Owen sat cross-legged on the floor in front of the twins, pulling a quarter from his pocket. "Want to see a magic trick?" he asked, trying to coax a smile from them. Frank returned with a tray steaming mugs of hot chocolate, thick sandwiches, and a plate of cookies shaped like stars and Christmas trees. Ethan watched as Claire's hands shook when she reached for the food. She handed sandwiches to Rose and Lily first, waiting until they'd taken their first bites before allowing herself even a sip of hot chocolate. The twins ate slowly at first, as if they weren't sure the food was real. Then hunger took over, and they ate with the desperate intensity of children who hadn't had a proper meal in days. Ethan moved to a bench across the room with Owen, giving them space, but staying close enough to help if needed. He studied Claire as she carefully wiped Lily's face with a napkin, as she whispered encouragement to Rose to drink more hot chocolate, as she made sure her daughters had everything they needed before taking a bite of her own sandwich. A mother doing what mothers do, putting their children first, even when she was clearly starving herself. Ethan felt memories stirring, sharp and unwelcome. 7 years ago, he'd been the one taking care of a child alone, learning on the fly, making mistakes, feeling like he was drowning every single day, wondering if he'd ever learn to breathe again. "Dad, can I show them the magic trick you taught me?" Owen's voice pulled him back to the present. "The one with the disappearing coin?" "Go ahead, buddy." As Owen entertained the twins, Ethan noticed something that made his stomach twist. Claire was still wearing a wedding ring, worn, thin, but still there on her left hand. But there was no husband here, no partner helping her keep their children safe and warm. After the twins had eaten and begun to relax, curling together on the couch under the blanket with fuller bellies and warmer bodies, Claire approached Ethan. Up close, under the fluorescent lights, he could see her more clearly. Despite the dirt smudged on her face and the exhaustion carved into every line, she had kind eyes, eyes that had clearly cried too many tears recently, but eyes that still held fight. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You didn't have to do this." Ethan shook his head. "Can I ask what happened? You don't have to tell me if you don't want to." Claire's face crumpled for just a moment before she caught herself, holding the tears back through sheer force of will. She glanced at her daughters, making sure they were far enough away not to hear. "My husband." Her voice cracked on the word. She took a breath, steadying herself. 6 months ago, he took out a large loan without telling me, said it was for a business opportunity, something that would change our lives. She laughed, but it was hollow, broken. He was right about that part. Ethan stayed quiet, letting her find the words. Then he left. Claire's hands twisted together. Ran off with a woman he'd been seeing behind my back. Left us with nothing but his debt. The men who came for the money, they took everything. Our house, our car, every penny in our savings account. They didn't care that I didn't sign anything. I didn't know about any of it. They just wanted their money. Ethan's jaw tightened. His hands curled around the edge of the bench, knuckles going white. He abandoned his children. "The shelter we've been staying at is full tonight because of the holiday," Claire continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "We've been waiting outside all evening, hoping a spot would open up, but it's Christmas Eve. Everyone needs somewhere to go tonight." She looked at Ethan, and he saw something in her eyes that he recognized: shame. The kind of shame that comes from feeling like you failed at the one job that matters most. "I've been applying for jobs everywhere, but no one wants to hire someone with no permanent address. The girls need to be in school, but I can't enroll them without a home. I feel like," her voice broke, "I feel like I'm failing them every single day." Ethan understood that feeling. He'd carried it like a weight on his chest for 7 years after Sarah died. the crushing responsibility of being the only thing standing between a child and complete devastation. "Do you have any family?" he asked gently. Claire shook her head. "My parents passed away when I was young. I was raised by my aunt, but she died 2 years ago. My husband's family." She swallowed hard. "They blamed me when he left. Said I must have driven him away, that I wasn't good enough." "That's not true," Ethan said firmly. The conviction in his voice surprised even him. "You didn't do anything wrong. He did. He's the one who failed, not you." Claire stared at him, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "I don't know what I did wrong," she whispered. "I tried to be a good wife. I worked, took care of the girls, and kept our home. I don't understand what I did to deserve this." Ethan leaned forward, his voice low and steady. "You didn't deserve any of it, and your daughters don't deserve to spend Christmas Eve freezing on the street." Across the room, Owen was showing the twins another magic trick. Lily giggled a small, fragile sound, and Rose clapped her hands softly. It was the first time Ethan had heard them make any sound of joy. An idea was forming in his mind. Probably not logical, definitely risky, but something about this moment felt bigger than logic. Something about this fierce, broken, beautiful woman trying so hard to protect her children made him want to be brave. "Listen," he said, making a decision that would change everything. "I have a small house. It's not much, but there's a guest room. You and the girls could stay there, just until you get on your feet." Claire's eyes went wide. "I can't. We couldn't impose it like that. You don't even know us." "I know enough." Ethan glanced at her daughters. "I know you're a mother trying to protect her children. I know you need help, and I know it's Christmas Eve, and I can't let you go back out into that cold." He paused, and something in his chest loosened a knot he hadn't realized he'd been carrying for 7 years. "I'm a single dad, too," he said quietly. "My wife died 7 years ago. I've been raising Owen alone since he was 3. It's not easy. There were times when I needed help, when I didn't think I could make it through another day." He met Claire's eyes. "Someone gave me a chance when I needed it most. Let me do the same for you." Claire stared at him like he'd just spoken in a language she didn't understand. "Why would you do this? We're strangers." Ethan looked at Owen, who had both twins laughing now with his silly impressions of his son, who had lost his mother but never lost his kindness, who saw people hurting and wanted to help because that's what Ethan had taught him, even when Ethan himself had been drowning in grief. "Because it's the right thing to do," Ethan said simply, "and because nobody should be alone on Christmas." If this story is reminding you why kindness matters, drop a comment below telling us about a time someone showed up for you when you needed it most. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got more stories like this coming your way. The drive to Ethan's house was quiet. Claire and the twins were crammed into the back seat with their meager belongings. 2 small backpacks containing a few changes of clothes and a worn stuffed rabbit that Rose clutched like a lifeline. Owen sat in the front, occasionally turning around to whisper something to the twins that made them smile shyly. Ethan's mind was racing. What was he thinking? He had a 10-year-old son, a barely there budget, and a house that was already too small for the 2 of them. Now he was bringing home 3 more people. But every time doubt crept in, he remembered Claire's face in that moment before he'd approached the way she'd pulled her daughters close, trying to shield them with a body that was already frozen and exhausted. The fierce, desperate love of a parent with nothing left to give except themselves. He knew that feeling. "We're home." Owen's voice broke through Ethan's thoughts. They were pulling up to the small rental house, a modest 2-bedroom with chipped paint and a front porch that sagged slightly on one side. It wasn't much, but it was home. Claire stared at the house like it was a mansion. "It's perfect," she whispered. Inside, the house was warm and lived in worn furniture, scuffed floors, a Christmas tree in the corner decorated with handmade ornaments Owen had crafted over the years. Nothing fancy, nothing impressive, but it was safe. "The guest room is here," Ethan said, leading them down the narrow hallway. "It's mostly been used for storage. I'll clear out some space tonight. For now, Owen can sleep on the couch and you and the girls can take his room." "No, please," Claire protested. "We can't take his room." But Owen was already gathering his favorite stuffed animals from his bed. It's okay. I like camping on the couch, and Rose and Lily need my room more than me tonight. Ethan felt his throat tighten with pride. Is that okay? Owen asked the twins, holding out his stuffed dinosaur to Lily. You can borrow Rex tonight. He's really good at keeping nightmares away. Lily took the dinosaur carefully, hugging it to her chest. Thank you, she whispered. Later that night, after the twins had fallen asleep in Owen's bed, their bellies full for the first time in days, their bodies finally warmed, Claire found Ethan in the kitchen. He was making tea because that's what Sarah used to do when she needed to think. It was one of 1,000 small habits he'd kept alive, trying to hold on to pieces of her. I don't know how to thank you, Claire said softly. Ethan handed her a mug. You don't have to. Just get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the next steps. There's a hiring manager at the bottling plant where I work who owes me a favor, and I know the principal at the elementary school. We can get the girls enrolled. Claire's hands shook as she held the warm mug. I'll pay you back, every cent. As soon as I can work, I'll contribute to groceries, rent, everything. I promise. Let's just take it one day at a time, Ethan said gently. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping their tea. You really raised Owen alone? Claire asked. Ethan nodded. It wasn't easy. Still isn't, but you do what you have to do for your kids. Your wife? Ethan felt the familiar ache in his chest, duller now after 7 years, but never fully gone. The heart condition we didn't know about. She was playing with Owen in the backyard one afternoon. One moment she was laughing, the next, he trailed off. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. I'm so sorry, Claire whispered. Thank you. Ethan looked at her directly. You have your daughters. And from what I've seen tonight, you're an incredible mother. That man was a fool to leave you. Claire's eyes filled with tears again, but this time she didn't look away. Why are you being so kind to us? Ethan thought about that question. About Sarah's death and the dark year that followed. About Mrs. Chen bringing casseroles every week. About Frank at the community center letting them use the facilities for free when money was impossibly tight. About all the small kindnesses from strangers that had kept Ethan and Owen afloat when they were drowning. Because people were kind to me when I needed it most, he said, and because kindness matters, especially on Christmas Eve. Claire looked at him, and something passed between them, a recognition of shared pain, shared struggle, shared strength. They were both wounded, both fighting, both doing everything possible to protect the children who depended on them. Merry Christmas, Ethan, Claire said softly. Merry Christmas, Claire. Neither of them knew it yet, but something was beginning. Something neither had been looking for, but both desperately needed. Outside, snow began to fall gently over the small Ohio town, covering the streets in white, making everything clean and new again. But in 3 weeks, Claire would discover something in her old paperwork that would change everything. A truth so devastating, it would force them both to confront not just her past, but the undeniable feelings growing between them. Christmas morning arrived with the smell of pancakes and the sound of children's laughter, a sound Ethan's house hadn't held in far too long. Owen had insisted on sharing his new bicycle with the twins, taking turns riding it up and down the hallway while Ethan made breakfast. Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking more rested than the night before, though her eyes were still shadowed with worry. I can help, she said immediately, moving toward the stove. Please let me help with something. Ethan stepped aside, and they fell into an easy rhythm, him flipping pancakes while she set the table. Their movements synchronized in a way that felt natural, comfortable. Over breakfast, Owen chattered endlessly about his art set and how he was going to teach Rose and Lily to draw dinosaurs. The twins were quiet but watchful, occasionally venturing small comments. They were still scared, still uncertain, but they were warming up. I need to be honest with you, Claire said after breakfast when the children were occupied in the living room. I don't have much work experience beyond bookkeeping and managing accounts. Before I got married, I ran a small accounting firm, but that was years ago, and after the girls were born, I stayed home. Can you work with numbers? Ethan asked. Yes. I'm actually really good with budgets and financial organization. Ethan felt something click into place. Then I know exactly where you need to work. The bottling plant needs someone in their accounting department. Our current person is a disaster. Let me make a call. The days after Christmas blurred together in a strange, unexpected harmony. Ethan called his hiring manager, Bernard, who owed him several favors. Bernard agreed to interview Claire. She got the job within the week. Claire started in the accounting department, and within 2 weeks she'd reorganized the entire filing system and caught 3 significant errors that had been costing the company money. Bernard pulled Ethan aside one day at lunch. "Where did you find her? She's brilliant. Best hire we've made in years." Ethan felt pride surge through him. Not the kind of pride you feel for yourself, but the deeper kind you feel when someone you care about succeeds. Wait, care about? Ethan pushed the thought away, but it lingered. Claire insisted on contributing to household expenses as soon as her first paycheck arrived. Ethan tried to refuse, but she was stubborn. "You've already given us everything," she said firmly. "Please let me do this. Let me feel like I'm not just taking." So they worked out an arrangement. She covered groceries. Ethan handled rent and utilities. They split the rest. The house began to feel different and fuller. The twins' laughter echoed through rooms that had been too quiet for too long. Rose drew pictures that Claire taped to the refrigerator. Lily sang little songs while coloring at the kitchen table. Owen thrived having siblings, teaching them games, showing them his favorite books, protecting them like a big brother. Family dinners became routine. Ethan would cook while Claire helped the kids with homework. They'd sit around the small table, talking about their days, making plans for the weekend. It felt natural, right? Ethan caught himself watching Claire sometimes. The way she laughed at Owen's terrible jokes. The way she bit her lip when concentrating on a budget spreadsheet. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. One evening, they were washing dishes together after dinner. Ethan washing, Claire drying. Their hands brushed as she reached for a plate. Ethan felt electricity shoot up his arm. Claire felt it too. He could tell by the way she froze, her breath catching. "Sorry," Ethan mumbled. "It's okay," she said quietly. But the air between them had shifted, charged with something neither was quite ready to name. 2 months passed. Spring was beginning to push away winter's grip. Claire and the twins had become permanent fixtures in Ethan's life, in his home, in his routine, in his heart. One Saturday afternoon, Claire was in the guest room organizing old paperwork, trying to rebuild her credit and make sense of the financial disaster her ex-husband had left behind. Ethan was in the kitchen when he heard her sharp intake of breath. "Ethan." Her voice was strange, shaking. "Ethan, I need to show you something." He found her sitting on the floor, surrounded by old documents, her hands trembling as she held a bank statement. "What is it?" he asked, kneeling beside her. "The loan," she said, her voice shaking. "The loan my husband supposedly took out." She looked up at him, her eyes wide with shock and fury. "Ethan, look at this signature." She showed him the document. The signature was clearly forged. The handwriting didn't match any of Claire's other signatures on legitimate documents. "He faked it," she whispered. "He committed fraud. I was never legally responsible for any of this debt." Ethan's mind raced. The men who took your house, your savings, they weren't legitimate. They were probably his friends helping him cover his tracks, making it look real so he could take the money and run. Claire's voice was growing stronger, anger replacing shock. "I have old text messages, bank statements showing suspicious transfers. I know where he is now. He's living 2 towns over. I saw it on social media before I had to sell my phone." Ethan grabbed her shoulders gently. "We're going to fix this. But Claire, this isn't just about money. This is fraud. You could—" "I don't want lawyers and courts," Claire interrupted, her eyes fierce. "I want to look him in the face. I want him to know I figured it out, and I want what he stole from my daughters." Ethan saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Strength. Raw, powerful, unbreakable strength. "Then let's go," he said, "but I'm coming with you. You're not doing this alone." The drive took 40 minutes. Claire had found her ex-husband's address through an old mutual friend who didn't know the whole story. The apartment building was run down, paint peeling, the kind of place people ended up when they were running from something. Ethan parked across the street. "Are you sure about this?" Claire nodded. "I'm sure." They climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor. Apartment 3C. Claire knocked firm, steady, unafraid. The man who answered the door looked nothing like Ethan had imagined. Average height, thinning hair, wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt. He looked at Claire and his face went pale. Claire, what? How did you? I know everything, Ryan, Claire said, her voice cold and controlled. The fake loan, the forged signature, your friends pretending to be collectors, the gambling debts you covered up by destroying your family. Ryan's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I don't know what you're talking about. Claire pulled out her folder of documents. I have bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts, text messages you forgot to delete, records of your gambling activity, and I have witnesses who will testify that you bragged about your plan. It was a bluff. She didn't have witnesses, but Ryan didn't know that. His face crumbled. Claire, please. I was desperate. The gambling got out of control, and you destroyed your children's lives to cover your mistakes, Claire said, her voice shaking now with barely controlled rage. You made them homeless. You made them cold and hungry and scared on Christmas Eve, Ryan. Your daughters were begging for food on Christmas Eve while you were living in this apartment, safe and warm. Ryan's eyes filled with tears, but they were selfish tears. Tears of guilt and shame, not genuine remorse. Ethan stepped forward, unable to stay silent any longer. You're going to return every penny you stole. Whatever you have left, you're giving it back. I don't have it all, Ryan whimpered. I lost most of it gambling. Then you'll give what you have, Claire said firmly. And you'll sign a legal document admitting to the fraud. Because if you don't, I'm taking everything I have to every person you know. Your family, your employer, your friends. I'll make sure everyone understands exactly what kind of man you are. Ryan looked between them. This woman he'd betrayed and this stranger who stood beside her like a shield. He saw that he had no choice. Fine, he whispered. I'll get what I have. They left the apartment 20 minutes later with a bank check for $30,000. Not everything Ryan had stolen, but enough. And they had a signed confession, properly witnessed by a neighbor Ryan had called over. In the car, Claire sat silently, staring at the check in her hands. Then, suddenly, she started laughing. Not the hollow laugh from before, but real laughter, deep and cathartic and free. I can't believe that worked, she gasped between laughs. Ethan found himself laughing too. You were incredible in there. Fierce. Powerful. I've never seen anything like it. Claire's laughter faded, and she turned to look at Ethan. I couldn't have done it without you. Knowing you were there, that I wasn't alone. Ethan pulled the car over to the side of the road, his heart pounding. Claire, I need to tell you something. What is it? The truth that stunned me, he said, his voice rough with emotion. It wasn't about the fraud or the money or what your ex-husband did. Then what was it? It was watching you stand there in that apartment strong, fearless, and brilliant. It was realizing I've been in love with you for weeks, maybe months. Ethan reached for her hand. It was understanding that I didn't save you. You saved yourself. But I also realized something else. What? Claire whispered. I need you. Not because you need saving, but because you make my life better. You make Owen's life better. You make our house feel like a home again. He took a shaky breath. I don't want you to get your own place with that money. I want you to stay. I want us to be a family. Tears streamed down Claire's face. Ethan, You don't have to answer now, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. I needed you to know that what started as kindness on Christmas Eve became something real. Claire leaned across the console and kissed him. It was tentative at first, then deeper, filled with all the emotion they'd both been holding back for months. When they pulled apart, both were crying. I love you too, Claire whispered. I've loved you since that night you made me tea and told me I wasn't failing my daughters. Since you looked at me like I mattered, like I was worth something. You're worth everything, Ethan said fiercely. They sat there on the side of the road, foreheads touching, hands intertwined with two broken people who'd found their way to each other through the darkness. But their happily ever after was about to face one more devastating test. One that would force them to choose between fear and faith, between the past and the future they were building together. 3 weeks after confronting Ryan, Claire received a letter. She was standing in the kitchen, still wearing her work clothes, when she opened the envelope. Ethan was in the living room helping the kids with homework. their voices a warm murmur in the background. Claire read the first line and felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Notice of custody petition. Her hands started shaking so violently that the paper rattled. Ethan. Her voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. Ethan. He was beside her in seconds. What is it? What's wrong? Claire couldn't speak. She just handed him the letter. Ethan's face went pale as he read. Ryan was suing for full custody of Rose and Lily. The petition claimed that Claire was an unfit mother, that she'd exposed the children to homelessness, that she was now living with a man she barely knew, that she'd alienated the children from their father and was using them as pawns in a financial dispute. He's claiming I coerced him into giving me that money, Claire whispered, her voice hollow. He's saying the confession was signed under duress, that I threatened him. Ethan kept reading, his jaw clenched tighter with each line. And he's filed a restraining order against you, Ethan said quietly. He's claiming you're a danger to him. Claire sank into a chair, her entire body trembling. He's going to take them. He's going to take my babies. No, Ethan said firmly. No, he's not. This is retaliation. Any judge will see that. Will they? Claire's voice rose, panic bleeding through. Look at the facts, Ethan. I was homeless. I am living with a man I've only known for 3 months. I did confront Ryan. What if they think he's right? What if they think I'm unfit? The next morning, Claire met with a lawyer, a woman named Patricia whom Ethan had found through a friend at work. Patricia's face was sympathetic but serious as she reviewed the petition. I'm not going to lie to you, Claire. This is going to be difficult. Your ex-husband has painted a very specific picture, and he's done it strategically. But everything he's saying is a lie, Claire said desperately. I didn't coerce him. He abandoned us. He committed fraud. I believe you, Patricia said gently. But proving it in court is another matter. That confession he signed, without proper legal representation present, a judge might rule it inadmissible. And the fact that you confronted him without involving the police first, it doesn't look good. Claire felt like she was suffocating. What about the girls? They'll tell the judge they want to stay with me. Patricia hesitated. The court will likely appoint a guardian ad litem to interview the children. But Claire, your daughters are 7 years old, and your ex-husband is their biological father. Unless we can prove he's actively dangerous to them, the court may grant him partial custody at minimum. Maybe even full custody temporarily while the case proceeds. Temporarily? Claire's voice broke. How long is it temporarily? Could be months, could be longer. Claire stared at Patricia, feeling her entire world crumbling. I can't lose them. I can't. They're all I have. That night, Claire couldn't eat and couldn't sleep. She sat in the guest room, the room that had become her sanctuary, staring at the wall where there was a soft knock on the door. Claire? Ethan's voice was gentle. Can I come in? She didn't answer, but he came in anyway, sitting beside her on the bed. Talk to me, he said quietly. This is my fault, Claire whispered. I shouldn't have confronted Ryan. I should have gone to the police first, done everything the right way. But I was so angry, so desperate to make him pay for what he did to us. And now, her voice broke. Now I'm going to lose them because I was stupid. You weren't stupid. You were a mother protecting her children. And look where it got me. Claire turned to him, tears streaming down her face. Patricia says the hearing is in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Ethan. And there's a real possibility they'll take Rose and Lily away from me, even temporarily. Do you understand what that will do to them, after everything they've been through? Ethan reached for her hand, but Claire pulled away. Maybe. She could barely force the words out. Maybe this was a mistake. Ethan's face went very still. What was a mistake? This. Us. Claire gestured around the room. Ryan's using our relationship against me. He's saying I'm prioritizing a man I barely know over my daughter's stability. What if he's right? What if I move too fast? What if... Stop, Ethan said firmly. Don't do this. Do what? Push me away because you're scared. His voice was raw. I know what you're doing, Claire. You're trying to protect yourself, trying to control something in a situation that feels completely out of control. But pushing me away isn't going to help you win this case. You don't understand, Claire said, standing up, pacing. If I lose them, Ethan, if they take my daughters... She pressed her hands to her chest. I won't survive it. I can't lose anyone else. I can't. You're not going to lose them. You don't know that. Claire's voice rose. Months of, I can't let myself depend on you, on this, on us, when everything might fall apart, when I might lose everything that matters. Ethan stood, his face pale. Everything that matters? Is that what I am to you? What Owen is? We don't matter? That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Ethan's voice was quiet now, which somehow made it worse. Because it sounds like you're saying that the moment things get hard, you're going to shut me out, that I'm not worth fighting for. I'm fighting for my daughters. And I'm trying to fight for you. Ethan's voice cracked. I'm trying to stand beside you through this, but you won't let me. You're so scared of losing control, of being vulnerable, that you're willing to throw away what we have. Claire stared at him, her chest heaving. Maybe it would be better if the girls and I moved out, until after the custody hearing, so Ryan can't use our relationship against me. The words hung in the air like broken glass. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, and Claire saw the exact moment her words landed and saw the hurt flash across his face before he carefully locked it away. Is that really what you want? He asked quietly. No. Every cell in her body screamed no. But fear had its claws in her throat, and she couldn't force the truth out. I think it's what's best for the girls. Ethan nodded slowly. Okay, if that's what you think is best. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. For what it's worth, Claire, you're not alone. You never were. But you have to let people in. You have to trust that love doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Claire sank to the floor, wrapping her arms around herself, and finally let herself break. The next morning, Claire started packing. Owen watched from the hallway, his face pale and confused. Why are you leaving? Did we do something wrong? No, sweetie, Claire said, her voice thick with tears. You didn't do anything wrong. I just need to do this for Rose and Lily. But this is your home, Owen said, and his voice was so small, so hurt, that it nearly destroyed her. I know, baby, I know. Rose and Lily didn't understand. They cried, clinging to Claire, asking why they had to leave, asking if they'd done something bad. Ethan helped them load the car, his movements mechanical, his face carefully blank. And Patricia had helped Claire find a small, efficient apartment, nothing fancy, barely furnished, but it was temporary, just until the hearing. Just until she could prove to the court that she was stable, responsible, fit. Before they left, Claire turned to Ethan one last time. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Ethan looked at her, and the pain in his eyes nearly broke her. I love you, he said simply. That doesn't just go away because you're scared. When you're ready to stop running, I'll be here. Then he went back inside, and Claire drove away with her daughters, watching in the rearview mirror as the only home they'd known in months disappeared behind them. The apartment was cold and sterile, nothing like the warmth of Ethan's house. That night, Rose and Lily cried themselves to sleep, asking for Owen, asking for Ethan, asking to go home. Claire lay awake in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her choices crushing her. She'd thought she was protecting her daughters, but all she'd done was break their hearts, and her own. If you've ever made a choice out of fear that you later regretted, drop a comment below. Sometimes we push away the very people who could help us through our darkest moments. Don't forget to subscribe. This story isn't over yet. 5 days before the custody hearing, Claire sat in the sterile efficiency apartment, surrounded by legal documents she'd read 1,000 times. Rose and Lily were quieter now, sadder. They didn't laugh anymore. They asked about Owen every day, asked when they could go home. Claire told them soon, but the word felt like a lie. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Need to talk. Can you come to my office? An hour later, Claire sat across from Patricia, her stomach in knots. I've been doing some digging, Patricia said, sliding a folder across the desk. And I found something interesting. Your ex-husband? He's been living with his girlfriend for the past 4 months, the same woman he left you for. Claire's heart stuttered. So? So according to his custody petition, he claims he's providing a stable, 2-parent home environment for the girls. But here's the thing. Patricia pulled out another document. His girlfriend has a criminal record, 2 DUIs and a conviction for check fraud from 3 years ago. Claire leaned forward, her pulse quickening. The court won't look favorably on him placing your daughters in a home with someone who has that kind of history, Patricia continued, especially when he failed to disclose it in his petition. But Claire, there's more. She pulled out bank statements. Ryan's been gambling again, heavily. He's racked up another $15,000 in debt in the past 2 months. He's not trying to get custody because he wants his daughters back. He's doing it because he thinks he can leverage them to get more money from you or to avoid paying child support. Claire stared at the documents, her hands shaking. Can we use this? We can, Patricia said. But Claire, I need to be honest with you. The strongest part of your case was never the evidence against Ryan. It was the life you'd built for your daughters. The stability, the loving home, the support system. Patricia looked at her meaningfully. The life you walked away from 5 days ago. The words hit Claire like a physical blow. That night, Claire couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Ethan's words. You have to trust that love doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger. She thought about Owen's hurt face, Rose and Lily's tears, the warmth of the home she'd left behind. She'd been so terrified of losing control, of being vulnerable, that she'd destroyed the one thing that had actually saved her. Not just Ethan's house, not just his kindness, but his love, and hers for him. At 2 a.m., Claire got out of bed and pulled out her phone. She stared at Ethan's number for a long time. Then she started typing. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was scared, and I pushed you away, and I broke something beautiful because I thought I could protect myself from more pain. But all I did was create it. For all of us. I don't know if you can forgive me. I don't know if it's too late, but I need you to know I love you. I've loved you since that first night, and I was a fool to think I could do this alone. Her finger hovered over the send button. Then she pressed it. She waited, staring at the screen, but no response came. Claire set the phone down, her heart breaking all over again. Maybe it was too late. Maybe she'd destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to her. The next morning, Claire was getting the girls ready for school when there was a knock at the door. She opened it, expecting the landlord. Instead, Ethan stood there, holding 2 cups of coffee and a bag of donuts. You texted, he said simply. Claire's eyes filled with tears. You came. I told you I'd be here when you were ready to stop running. Ethan's voice was soft. I meant it. I'm so sorry, Claire whispered. I was terrified and stupid and indelible. You were scared, Ethan interrupted gently. I get it. But Claire, you don't have to face this alone. You never did. The hearing is in 4 days, Claire said, her voice breaking. Patricia found evidence that could help, but she said the strongest part of my case was the home I'd built for the girls, the home I left. Ethan set down the coffee and donuts, then took both her hands in his. Then come back, he said. Come home, all of you. What if we lose? Claire asked. What if they take the girls anyway? What if? Then we'll fight, Ethan said firmly. Together, and if we lose, we'll appeal. We'll keep fighting, but Claire, win or lose, you don't have to face it alone. That's what family does. We show up for each other. Claire looked into his eyes and saw everything she'd been too afraid to trust. Steadiness, love, commitment, faith. Owen must hate me, she whispered. Owen misses you. He's been asking every day when you're coming home. All 3 of you. Behind Claire, Rose and Lily appeared in the doorway, still in their pajamas. Ethan, Lily squealed, running toward him. He caught her in his arms, then reached for Rose with his other arm, gathering them both close. Hey, my girls, he said softly. Are you ready to come home? They both nodded frantically, tears streaming down their faces. Ethan looked up at Claire over their heads. What do you say? Ready to stop running? Claire nodded, unable to speak through her tears. Then let's go home, Ethan said. We've got a custody hearing to prepare for, and this time we will do it together. The courtroom was cold and sterile. Claire sat at the plaintiff's table with Patricia, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Ethan sat in the gallery directly behind her, a silent pillar of strength. Across the aisle, Ryan sat with his lawyer, looking confident, too confident. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Morrison, reviewed the documents in front of her. This is a custody hearing regarding Rose and Lily Dawson, she began. Mr. Dawson is petitioning for full custody, claiming the mother is unfit. Mrs. Dawson is contesting. Let's begin. Ryan's lawyer went first, painting Claire as unstable, reckless, and vindictive. He emphasized her homelessness, her confrontation with Ryan, her rushed relationship with a man she barely knew. Claire felt every word like a knife. Then it was Patricia's turn. Your Honor, Mr. Dawson has painted a very specific picture, but let's look at the facts. Patricia stood, commanding the room. Mr. Dawson committed fraud. He forged his wife's signature on loan documents, stole $47,000 from their joint accounts, and abandoned his family to cover gambling debts. She presented the bank statements, the forged documents, the evidence they'd gathered. Mrs. Dawson didn't make her daughters homeless. Mr. Dawson did. And when she found herself with nothing, she didn't give up. She found work. She found housing. She rebuilt her life from nothing. Patricia placed another stack of documents on the judge's desk. Mr. Dawson claims he can provide a stable home, but he's currently living with a woman who has 2 DUIs and a fraud conviction. He's accumulated another $15,000 in gambling debt in the past 2 months, and he failed to disclose any of this in his petition. Ryan's face went pale. Your Honor, Patricia continued, Mr. Dawson isn't seeking custody because he loves his daughters. He's seeking it as leverage, as revenge against a woman who refused to be his victim. Judge Morrison looked at Ryan. Mr. Dawson, is this true? Are you currently cohabiting with someone with a criminal record? Ryan's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear. Yes, Your Honor, but... And you failed to disclose this in your petition? I didn't think it was relevant. You didn't think it was relevant. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. You're asking this court to remove children from their mother's care, claiming she's providing an unstable environment, while you yourself are living with someone convicted of fraud and driving under the influence. Ryan stammered, but no words came. Judge Morrison turned to Clare. Mrs. Dawson, I'd like to hear from you directly. Tell me about your current living situation. Clare stood, her voice shaking but growing stronger with each word. Your Honor, 3 months ago, I was homeless. A stranger, a good man, gave me and my daughters shelter on Christmas Eve. He didn't have to. He just saw that we needed help, and he helped. She glanced back at Ethan, drawing strength from his steady gaze. That man is Ethan Deckard. He's a single father who lost his wife 7 years ago. He works at a bottling plant. He's kind. He's patient. He's raised an incredible son who treats my daughters like they're his sisters. And yes, I fell in love with him. Not because I was looking for someone to save me, but because he showed me what real partnership looks like, what a real family looks like. Claire's voice broke, but she pushed on. My daughters have a home, Your Honor. They have stability. They have people who love them unconditionally. Ryan abandoned them when they needed him most. I will never do that. Never. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison made notes, her face unreadable. I'd like to speak to the children, she said finally, separately with the guardian ad litem present. 30 minutes later, Rose and Lily returned from the judge's chambers, holding the guardian's hands. The guardian, a kind-faced woman named Miss Chen, approached the bench and spoke quietly to Judge Morrison. Claire couldn't hear what was said, but she saw the judge's expression soften. Finally, Judge Morrison looked up. I've reviewed all the evidence and spoken with the children. This is my ruling. Claire's heart stopped. Mr. Dawson, your petition for custody is denied. Furthermore, given the evidence of fraud, your continued gambling, and your failure to disclose material information to this court, I'm ordering supervised visitation only 2 hours per month, with a court-appointed supervisor present. Ryan's face went red. Your Honor, I'm not finished. Judge Morrison's voice was steel. You will also begin making child support payments of $800 per month, retroactive to the date you abandoned your family. And Mr. Dawson, if you ever file another frivolous petition in my courtroom, I will hold you in contempt. She turned to Clare and her expression gentled. Mrs. Dawson, your daughters are clearly thriving in your care. You've shown remarkable resilience and strength. Custody remains with you, full and soul. This case is closed. The gavel came down. Clare couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then Patricia was hugging her, and Ethan was there, pulling her into his arms, and Rose and Lily were crying and laughing, and everything was noise and joy and relief. You did it, Ethan whispered against her hair. You did it. We did it, Clare corrected, looking up at him through her tears. We did it together. Outside the courthouse, Ryan tried to approach them, but Ethan stepped in front of Claire and the girls, his body a shield. "Walk away," Ethan said, quietly. "You lost. It's over." Ryan stared at him, then at Claire, and something in his face finally broke. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." But the apology was 7 months too late, and Claire didn't have room in her heart for his regret anymore. She took her daughter's hands, nodded to Ethan, and walked away. Toward home. Toward the life they'd built from ashes. Toward the future that finally belonged to them. 1 year later. The same community center where they'd first met was decorated with white flowers and twinkling lights. Ethan stood at the front of the room in a suit Owen had helped him pick out. His son stood beside him as best man, grinning so wide his face might split. Frank, the elderly night supervisor who'd helped them that first frozen Christmas Eve, stood in front of them holding a small book. "Dearly beloved," he began, his gruff voice surprisingly tender. The doors at the back opened. Claire walked in, wearing a simple white dress, her dark hair falling in soft waves around her shoulders. Rose and Lily walked ahead of her as flower girls, scattering petals and giggling softly. Ethan's breath caught. She was beautiful not just on the outside, but in all the ways that mattered, in her strength, her resilience, her love. When Claire reached him, she took his hands, tears shimmering in her eyes. "We're here today," Frank continued, "to celebrate the joining of two families who found each other when they needed it most, to celebrate love that grew from kindness, to celebrate second chances and new beginnings." "I do," Ethan said when prompted, his voice strong and certain. "I do," Claire echoed, tears streaming down her face. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Ethan pulled Claire close and kissed her as Owen, Rose, and Lily cheered. The small gathering of friends and coworkers applauded. Frank wiped his eyes with a handkerchief. That night at the reception, Ethan stood to give a toast. "2 years ago," he began, "I thought I was just helping a stranger on Christmas Eve. I thought I was just doing the right thing." He looked at Claire, who was watching him with such love it made his chest ache. "But the truth that stunned me wasn't about fraud or money or even justice. The truth was that in trying to help her, she helped me. She brought light back into a house that had been dark for too long. She gave Owen siblings. She gave me a reason to believe in love again." Ethan raised his glass. "The truth that stunned me was that sometimes broken things can be made more beautiful than they were before. That love finds you when you're busy being kind. That family isn't always about blood. It's about showing up, day after day, for the people who matter." "To Claire," he said, "to second chances to find home in the most unexpected places." "To family," Claire added softly. "To family," everyone echoed. As the party continued around them, Ethan pulled Claire close, swaying gently to the music. Owen was teaching Rose and Lily a silly dance, and their laughter filled the room. "Thank you," Claire whispered against his chest, "for seeing me when I was invisible, for giving us a home when we had nowhere to go, for loving my daughters like they're your own." Ethan tilted her chin up. "Thank you for taking a chance on a stranger, for letting me into your life, for making our family complete." They kissed softly as snow began to fall outside, just like it had that first Christmas Eve. Ethan thought about that night 2 years ago, about three figures huddled against the cold, about the decision to offer help instead of looking away, about how one small act of kindness had transformed into something bigger than he'd ever imagined. Sometimes the greatest miracles come from the simplest choices. Sometimes saving someone else is exactly how you save yourself. And sometimes, on a frozen Christmas Eve, when you open your heart to a stranger, you find exactly what you've been missing all along. Friends, if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness has the power to change everything, don't just watch and walk away. Hit that subscribe button and join the Unbroken Truths family for more stories that restore your faith in humanity. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that even in our darkest moments, hope can find us. Drop a comment telling us what this story meant to you. And remember, you never know how one act of kindness might change someone's entire life. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in the power of love, second chances, and unbroken truths. Until next time, keep your hearts open, keep showing up for each other, and keep believing that broken things can be made beautiful again.